everybody, JC here with another T&I toy review. And for today's review, I'm going to be taking a look at the brand new DC Comics Icon 6-inch Swamp Thing figure from DC Collectibles. Now this figure comes packaged in the same style packaging we've been seeing with all the icons. You've got the white and green highlights for this one to match the character. The figure's clearly displayed in the window box. Down below you've got the Icons logo. Off to the side you have the name of the character, and it tells us this is figure number 18 in the series. Off to the other side, it tells us this figure is based on the character's appearance in the Dark Genesis graphic novel, which is essentially just a reprint of the early issues of Swamp Thing back in the 70s. And then on the back of the packaging, we have a look at the other figures in the wave. So we have Swamp Thing, the New 52 Wonder Woman, the Deluxe Cyborg, and Deathstroke. And all of these figures are out at comic and specialty shops now. Then down below, it tells us this figure was designed by Ivan Reyes and sculpted by Eric Sosa. All right, let's get this open and take a look at what's inside. Okay, so here's a look at the figure outside of the packaging along with the other contents. Now, first of all, let me just say a big thanks to the folks at DC Collectibles for sending me this figure so I could review it for you guys. Now, this figure does come with a little instruction sheet like we've seen with all the figures in this wave that shows you how to work all the accessories with the figures. You've got Swamp Thing and Static on one side, and then you've got Wonder Woman and Deathstroke on the other side. So first of all, this figure comes with two different pairs of hands. We get a pair of closed-fisted hands, and these are the ones that are attached to the figure when you first take it out of the packaging. And to switch out the hands, you just pop them off like we always see. You've got the little peg on the hand and the hole in the arm, and then you can plug in the second pair of hands, which are basically open grip hands, and they fit in there nice and tight. And then the other accessory that this figure includes, which is probably the coolest thing about this figure, is one of the Un-Men Cranius, who is the leader of the Un-Men. And I really like the design of this. I think they've done a nice job. If you're not familiar, Cranius is basically this big giant brain with a face plastered on the front of it and attached to a human hand. He basically walks around on fingers. And so I think they've done a pretty nice job with the sculpting of this. I like the paint applications. You've got some lighter and darker colors, and you can also make out some veins here on the side. So I think that really looks good. And he's got an open mouth, and you can see his tongue in there and his teeth. So just really nice sculpting detail on this and strong paint applications. There's no articulation or anything. It's just a solid piece, but it looks pretty true to how this character appeared in the comic books. Okay, so for the figure itself, I've got to be honest, this is probably my least favorite figure in the wave. Now, this version of Swamp Thing is based on his early years back in the 70s, and that version of Swamp Thing was not as big as the bulkier version that we see today. However, I do think they kind of overdid it, even though he wasn't as big. I think he was bigger than how this figure appears. Basically, this figure comes off looking almost a little anorexic to me, and so I think they overdid it with the thinness. I do like the sculpting detail. I do like the face sculpt, and I like how they did the eyes specifically. I like the red, and then you've got those little gold eye pupils, which stand out nicely in the light. So I think they did a really good job with that. And then you've got pretty nice sculpting detail. You can make out some veins, or maybe these are supposed to be vines. I don't know. But you got that there on his bicep and here in his chest section. So I like that detailing, and again on his back there, I think it looks pretty good. And then for the paint applications, not too bad. I do think maybe some of the greens come off a little too bright. In the comics, he's always seen kind of a darker green, and in part because he's always in the dark swamp and everything. Whereas on this figure, you definitely have some pretty bright greens that kind of stand out on the figure. It doesn't bother me too much, and I think it looks good on the figure. I'm just not sure it's terribly comic book accurate that he's that bright a green. And even on the legs, again, you've got nice sculpting detail, again, with those veins or vines, whatever you want to call it. And then pretty nice sculpting detail with his toes as well. So Swamp Thing here is pretty tall. He stands just under 7 inches tall. The Un-Men Cranius figure stands at about 1.5 inches, maybe a little bit over 1.5 inches tall. And here's a comparison with the DC Collectibles 7-inch version of Swamp Thing. And you can see the 7-inch figure is based on his more modern New 52 look, which was a bulkier figure. But still, I like this look overall better for Swamp Thing. And I also like the colors on the 7-inch figure. I think are perfect, not quite as bright as on the Icons figure. Here's a comparison with the more recent Justice League Rebirth Icons Batman figure and the Icons Deadman figure. Here's a comparison with the old Toy Biz Marvel Legends Swamp Thing figure. And then finally, here's a comparison with the DC Collectibles 7-inch version of John Constantine. So for articulation, you can turn the head to the left and to the right. He really doesn't have any up or down movement with the head. Arms attached with your standard ball hinge joint at the shoulder, so he can get his arm out good. He's got good rotation. He's got a bicep swivel. He's got a double hinged elbow, so good bending there at the elbow. He's got swivels at the wrist and hinges on the hands, so good up and down movement with the hands. He's got a midsection joint, so he's got rotation there at the midsection. And you can pivot to the left and right a little bit. Can't really crunch down at the midsection, but he does have an ab crunch joint, so he can look down about that much, and then he can look back about that much. Doesn't have a waist swivel. Legs are attached with ball joints, so he can do the splits good. You can pull the leg out from the socket, and he can get his leg forward pretty good, and you can do the leg out and back. He doesn't have a thigh swivel, but you do have rotation up high there with the ball joint. Double hinged knee, so good bending at the knee, and then hinges on the feet, so good up and down movement, and he does have ankle pivot, and 2 peg holes on the bottom of the feet. Okay, so that's my review. So as I said at the beginning, this is probably my least favorite figure in the wave. I don't think it's a horrible figure, but I do think he's a little bit on the thin side, and I think the greens on the figure are a little bit too bright for the actual character. However, I do like the face sculpt. I really like how the eyes look on the figure, and I also like the addition of Cranius. I think that's a nice add-on that they included with it. So this figure is hitting comic and specialty shops now. We'll have a full image gallery up at toynewseye.com. There'll be a link in the video description below. As always, leave a comment. Let us know what you think. If you're so inclined, please like the video. Also, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. And until next time, I'll catch you later.